Good afternoon. It is Sunday. We're the last Sunday in September, if you can believe that. It's absolutely gorgeous today. It started off super cloudy everywhere, but now sun is breaking through. Birds are chirping in the background. Found this nice little spot. I'm actually sitting on concrete. I'm trying to figure out what this little structure was. I'm up at the top of a little hill here. And yep, still in southern Sweden. And I get my ideas for these little poetry breaks. They just come naturally to me. Sometimes I sleep and they come to me in my sleep, or I'm just walking about and I see something, or I'm reminded of an encounter I had. Giorgos Seferis, not Seferis, Seferis. Sorry, my Greek is rusty. Seferis, I should say his name right, was a fantastic Greek poet of the 20th century. I was first introduced to him when I was in my late teens. I have family, not by blood, but by family and other connections in Greece, in the Peloponnesus and in Thessaloniki and in Athens and in some of the islands. And so I can go to Greece, and I used to be treated like family. And it was a wonderful thing. And I had a connection. I was visiting like the islands that are near to Athens, Poros, Spetses, Hydra. And I had lunch once with a fascinating guy who translated Giorgos Seferis. I keep saying Seferis, like safari. It's Seferis. But I'm going to leave it in, be authentic. And so Athanasios Anagnostopoulos was a family friend. I mean, they're not real family to me, but treated me like family. So Athan was a scholar, a translator, a poet. He was kind of an intellectual jack of all trades, and he founded, some people know him in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He founded the Greek Institute there, which is still going strong. Greek cultural organizations he was involved in. He had he had an institute just in the shadow of the Acropolis on Thrasilu Street. Anyway, we had lunch one day, and he told me all about Seferis. I said it right that time. And he translated some of Seferis' journals and poetry, and they were great friends, and hung out on the island of Poros. Seferis liked it because of the quality of light. Of course, he was not in Greece a lot, and he wasn't born in Greece. Well, he was, but wasn't. He was exiled. He was born in Smyrna, which is now known as Izmir. I'm not going to get into the history of that. If you don't know it, you can find many resources. But so his poetry is a lot about exile, this idea of home. And he's also trying to connect Greek history, mythology, the ancient Greek world, with the way it was when he was walking the earth in the middle of the 20th century. He became a diplomat. He was stationed all over the place. I believe he finished off his career in the UK. He was a Greek ambassador to UK. He died I believe he was born right around the turn of the century, and then he died in like 1971. He did win a Nobel Prize. But yeah, he was, of course, deep humanist. He felt exile deeply, and he felt this disconnection between the heritage of Greece and what it was becoming. If anyone knows what was going on in Greece in the 60s and 70s, you can read about that too. One of his poems, his most famous poem, became something that was chanted in the streets, and it was kind of considered revolutionary and was outlawed. And we're going to read that poem It's called Denial, or sometimes it's called On the Seashore. It's a great poem. You know it because it's known by several different names. So but it was adapted into a song by Mikis Theodorakis, and was a symbol of the resistance. And so even today, like, a lot of Greeks know it through the song that was created. We're going to read that one last, but to introduce a little bit of Seferis, and he wrote a lot of like really brief poems, like 54 words, something like that. And you know that he very carefully chiseled each word. He didn't make mistakes, and they translate fairly well. I was reading some of the Italian translations, and I might read a little bit of the Italian on the Denial poem. But we're going to start with Lost Worlds, Giorgos Seferis. How can you gather together the 1,000 fragments of each person? What's wrong with the rudder? The boat inscribes circles, and there's not a single gull. The world sinks. Hang on, it'll leave you. Done in the sun. You write, the ink grew less, the sea increases, the body that hoped to flower like a branch, to bear fruit, to become like a flute in the frost. Imagination has thrust it into a noisy beehive so that musical time can come and torture it. I like that he chooses his words and images so precisely, and yet there's a lot of room for interpretation in what he says. And so that's the adaptability of his poetry. And I think he played a lot with those ideas, because I think he felt that in his time, you were feeling all of these changes and pressures in life, like the Greek political situation, like as if it's ever been stable, was particularly volatile during those times, during a lot of those times. And just the way he grew up, like never feeling that you have a home, you don't have someplace to return to. And then he tried to, in some of his works, he tried to infuse like some of those ancient Greek myths into the present day. And then I'm going to go on into Leaf of the Poplar. And in case you're unaware, the Lefkos, the poplar, is all throughout Greek history and mythology. And the nymph Lefke was transformed into a poplar in the underworld when taken by Hades. Heracles and Dionysus were connected to poplar trees. The Heliades, daughter of Helios. It goes on, and it's fascinating to think about, the humble poplar tree and how it was symbolized and transformed through all these stories that go way back. And so by the time he's writing about it, he's talking about the leaf of the poplar. It's a distant echo. Not everyone's going to pick up on those associations or know all the associations. And so it's kind of reintroducing in some ways. And then maybe a poplar is just a poplar, you often get that in poetry. I remember arguing with a professor once. I was writing a paper about a poem, and she told me a white tablecloth is just a white tablecloth. And I said, no, it's not in this poem. And anyway, I'm rambling again, but I wanted to go and do this one, The Leaf of the Poplar. It trembled so, the wind set it sailing. It trembled so, how could it not yield to the wind? Far beyond the sea, far beyond an island in the sun. and hand gripping oars, dying the last stroke at the sighting of port, tired eyes closing like sea anemones. It trembled so much, I sought it so much. In the shade of the eucalyptus, spring to autumn, bare in the close woods, my God, I sought it. I didn't read that very dramatically, but so I often feel like even though he was, a poet of this magical, mythical land, I think he saw the duality of it, and largely because of the social and political situations that he lived through. But I remember often saying that, he went to Poros because he felt of any place in Greece that the quality of light was so inspiring there, and that he got his best ideas when he was on the island. So when I see he's talking about an island in the sun, I think he's talking about Poros, but could be a lot of different islands. But I love that. It's like I love talking to people about when they've been to Greece. I'm like, each island is very different. There's so many differences. It's like it's not just the Greek islands. It's which one and what did you find there? And how did you feel about it? So we're gonna do the one that he's most famous for, that was turned into a song that was used by the resistance when military took over things in the early 70s. People were in the streets and they would chant this poem, and then Theodorakis made it into a song. And it's often translated as denial. And then I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it in English and also in Italian. And actually maybe a lot of people know this poem. On the secret seashore, white like a pigeon, we thirsted at noon, but the water was brackish. On the golden sand, we wrote her name, but the sea breeze blew and the writing vanished. With what spirit, what heart, what desire and passion, we lived our life. A mistake. So we changed our life. I think that one can definitely go without any comment. And it's a quiet, elusive poem, but it's a beautiful thought that people who were railing against government overreach and tyranny and stuff like that could see in words, in simple words like those, a resistance, an aesthetic resistance to what was going on in the state houses. So I'm going to do it a little bit as I found this Italian translation, and I'm obviously not Italian, but it's been a lifelong passion of mine. I have a lot of engagement with Italy over the years, culturally, a lot of friends, studies, food, everything. And I've spent a lot of time there. I've made many trips, and I lived there most of the last year. And then in the wine trade, I made many contacts. I love all my Italian friends I made. In the 10 years, I was a wine merchant. But so I keep improving my Italian. It's never going to be great. I'm still at intermediate level, but I'm going to read. And this translator did it as Sulla spiaggia. It was like on the beach. It's like on the seashore is what it's sometimes translated in English, but Sulla spiaggia nascosta e bianca come una colomba. Avevamo sete a mezzogiorno, ma l'acqua era salmastra. Sopra la sabbia biondo scrivemmo il suo nome splendido, che soffiò la brezza e la scritta si cancellò. Col cuore, col respiro, che speranze e che corri, afferrammo la vita, errore, e cambiamo vita. So we changed our life. It's one of those poems that's deceptively simple, and if you don't read through it enough times or concentrate deeply enough on it, you can just dismiss it very easily. Like it's not. It doesn't seem profound until you really meditate on it, and then understand it in its cultural context, because it became, he wrote it, but then it culturally it went viral, I guess, back in the late 60s and 70s, and was adapted and changed and became, was threaded throughout the culture of the time. And I was thinking about that recently, because we're at a time where, culture is just being bottomed out, and just, it's nobody takes it seriously, and they don't understand that there's no, like, the importance of culture, the importance of words, and understanding the word and literature and where it comes from, and that we're all natural storytellers, all of us, and that we can develop that skill. It's not some highfalutin academic nonsense. And that's, I've talked with many people recently in different contexts, in different places, about how that's the only thing that's going to save us, is resurgence of culture, understanding of the word, telling stories, are getting into that imaginal space, pausing, reflecting, meditating, and we can all get there, and we can share our stories, and we don't have to follow these tired, poor, vanquished, blown to bits, bottomed out culture that we're in. Like, we don't have to accept that. We can create our own communities and systems, like, based on actual, authentic, genuine expression. And we all have that ability, and yet there's nice horns in the I think we're at a time of destruction and resurgence. Like, you see, like, they don't even pretend anymore. The idiots they put out as supposed leaders. Everything is reductive, mechanistic, idiotic. Like, these people can't think themselves out of a paper bag, and yet, they're presented as far more than they could ever imagine they could be. And it's because they're dumb that they're being put in these positions. But and so they want people of genuine learning and feeling and passion to feel like they're on the fringes, and that they're not welcome, and that they're outmoded, and that they're just effete, or things like that. But it's the other way around. Everything is twisted and upside down in the world these days. But so that's one reason why I've gone on the trail, is because I want to be part of a resurgence of culture, storytelling, speaking truth, speaking genuine, alignment with your soul and your connection with nature and with other people. And I probably sound like a crazy person, but we're all crazy, and we have to admit that. I think that's one of the most beautiful things is when people recognize their own zaniness, and that, like, as Paul Klee, the early 20th century artist, said, myself is a dramatic composition. You know, I'm not a solid block. You can't define me. You can't just file me away somewhere. We're all more than we think we are, and we can all share and find ways to just keep the human spirit alive. You know, I mean, Robert Bly, who I bring up a lot, he was often asked, it was like, you keep writing these protest poems, you know, and then like Seferis, you know, he didn't write overt protest poems, but he it's just like he was picking up on the mood, the zeitgeist, and so it was reflected back in a way where people saw it as resistance and protest. But Robert Bly wrote more explicit poetry, like against the Vietnam War, the you know, the more recent wars in the Middle East. And people said, yeah, but your poetry isn't changing anything. You know, the wars go on, you know, the agenda keeps marching forward. I mean, of course it is. And Robert would say that. He would say, it's just so that there's a record that the human spirit was still alive during these times. I mean, that's essentially what he said. And then some people might see that as sounding defeatist, but it's really not. It was like, we can't change. And if you want to get to the root of where all these problems are and who's really controlling things, nobody knows, really. You know, if you know their names, they're not in charge of anything, obviously. And so there's these deep, dark secrets underneath everything, but we can still create our own culture and our own systems and our own stories. And now I'm just babbling in kind of a crazy way, but it was just like, I feel like I said some things that might be helpful or interesting, and otherwise they can just be the blabberings of a guy who's been hiking every day and writing and editing and discovering himself and is in a relation to society in a new way, you know, instead of just complaining about it or being cynical. That's actually one of the things that I learned this year, is that so much of my life I was cynical about things, and it would come out. And like now I'm at a point where I'm all about the genuine, and I have a greater sense of humor too, because I've cut out the cynicism. It's so destructive. Like, I didn't realize how destructive it is, but it's like, you know, yeah, these things are going to go on. Like, other writers, I'm thinking Doris Lessing, other people said the same things. There's just like, there's never a good time. There's always an excuse. There's always pressures from outside, inside. The world's ending. It's horrible. But you have to sit down and, you know, write or compose music or, you know, do something, live and help other people get back to the spirit, because it's in there. You can see it in people's eyes. Like, I've had so many encounters along this trail with people who, you can see it. You can see it. Like, they feel in some ways maybe marginalized, or maybe that they don't have agency or freedom. I'm going to use the word freedom, okay? But it's still there, and it can be reactivated. And that's my message. Thank you so much. I don't know what I was talking about, but I'm going to put it out there, and hope to chat with you again soon. Thank you so much.